Well, it's finally happened. I got a chance to drive an S650 Mustang GT. Actually, I got to drive 3 different ones. What is my thoughts? As a Camaro 6 owner and also an S550 owner, if you're wondering where the S550 car is at the moment, it is getting into steering rack because I can't do that on the ground because I have to program the stupid thing. That car is killing me, and that was in the finance. That was a expense I didn't really anticipate or want to pay for. Safety is the best virtue. To start this off, what kind of GTs did I drive? I got to drive 2 non-performance pack cars and 1 performance pack car. One was a complete base trim GT, and then the other was, it was a premium with the 401A, and then the other one was a 401A performance pack out the performance exhaust. So I had non-performance exhaust cars and performance exhaust cars. Had them for a good amount of time, but unfortunately my dum-dum didn't record, and nor do I have any camera equipment. Plus you have sometimes the salesmen are just excited to go on a drive because they don't have to go on a drive with Explorers and all that crap, so they're excited to go in a Mustang. Have first-hand experience with the 6th gen Camaro. Have first-hand experience with the S550 Mustang, V6, V8. The only vehicles I haven't driven from the 6th gen Camaros is ZL1s. I've driven SS1LEs and regular SSs. I've driven plenty of SSs, plenty of RSs, and one LE, one SS, one LE. GT wouldn't compete with the ZL1. Go to the S550, I have driven 1 2018 GT, a 2015 V6, and then our 2016 V6. I haven't had as much experience after they refreshed the car, but so the S650 is basically the same car. Has a new skin on the outside, a slightly different interior with a lot of tech, and I'll get into that in a bit. That's basically it. They just carried over a lot of parts, like the steering rack, shaft is all from the Mach 1 car, suspension is from the GT500 and Mach 1, specifically if you get the performance pack. That is basically the S650 in a nutshell. What do I like about it? Actually, the first thing I will say, I like the new steering wheel. I think it actually is better than the S550 steering wheel, but I was impressed by it. It's nice and thick and meaty, no homo. It is, it's plush, it's got great ergonomics, there's nothing wrong with it. A little wide, it's nitpicking here and there, but otherwise I think it's a great wheel. I like the exterior styling. A lot of people have been saying it looks like a Camaro, but in my honest opinion, it looks like a Mustang. I can see a little bit, like maybe 5 to 10% of where they took influence from this car. Quarter panel, how it kind of clean haunch. There's no longer the hard line point in the center. For the most part, it looks like a Mustang. It does not look like a Camaro. Other things I like is the updated interior to an extent, and I'll get to that in a minute because there's also some things I really hate about the interior. I like the digital gauge cluster. I like the idea where you can change it to from all the different versions of it, like this car does have. So you can have like calm, you can have sport, track, normal, Fox body, which I'm too young for a Fox body age, so that doesn't resonate with me. But also they had the 66 or 67 gauge cluster in there. That was really cool. And I like the little bit of tech that they added into it, like the gauge cluster. Interior quality, they've definitely stepped it up on the base trim. I had a 301A, a 401A. From both, actually, it's a big upgrade from the S550, at least in our version of the S550. And I would say it's on par with this car. I'm adding post-production the sound of the S650. I always thought the Coyote sounds actually pretty good. For my opinion, engine that loves to be revved out, which I do prefer. I prefer engines that have a lot of torque up top. Why I like the 3.6 liter over the 2 liter. It feels more natural to me, and it's just how naturally aspirated engines dual overhead cams are. The sound of the Coyote with the performance exhaust sounds pretty good. So if you don't get the performance exhaust, you're really doing yourself a disservice. It sounds so muffled. It's just like the 6th gen Camaro without the NPP. You need the NPP or the performance exhaust. It really wakes the car up and gives it a lot more throat, and also you get more horsepower out of it. I think you get 5 more horsepower or 6 more horsepower if you get the performance exhaust, so that is a must. That $1,200 upgrade is totally worth it. I do think it's still a little too deep for my like more of a screaming V8. For V6s, I like deeper V6s. I would get the performance exhaust. That way you have the valve system. Now, if you don't care about the valve system, you don't care about the valve system, but I would get a Corsa exhaust or Borla, but I actually like Corsa over Borla when it comes to V8. And I'll play a clip here. Definitely want a Corsa exhaust on the S650 Mustang. So the sound, chef's kiss with a Corsa exhaust. It sounds close to a GT350, which is my favorite exhaust system of all time to hear. Things I hate outside of any driving experience that I will mention down the line. I don't care for Unreal Engine. I am a tech guy. Work for a giant tech company. I love tech. I game. If I'm not working out or making these videos or working, I am playing video games. I enjoy technology. I've always been in that realm. Unfortunately, I think Ford may have went too far with the technology. Unreal Engine is cool, but it's kind of like a Tesla. It's cool for 3 seconds, but then you'll never touch it again and not care about it. The digital gauge cluster is kind of cool. It is a little bit laggy. Even on the premium, it's not the smoothest. It's not 120 refresh hertz consistently. It does have some latency issues. It's really much of a gimmick, in my opinion. And I would rather them cut that crap out, put it into the chassis of the car. I don't like the design of the dash, like how it actually is just 2 iPads. If you get the base trim, I think is a better value. Or if you get the premium with the big glass display, I think that all is just crap. I liked the S550 when they added the digital gauge cluster. I like this car with the digital gauge cluster, the C8 Corvette with the digital gauge cluster, where they kind of have like a design around it. They're just sticking iPads right there like Tesla does. Except for Tesla stands, nobody likes Tesla interiors. They're just too basic. And I think they just kind of missed the mark. I don't know what focus group they were going into thinking that would be a good idea for a Mustang. Whole 3D model of the car and all that crap. Just cut that out. No one wants any of that crap. We're all gonna put Apple CarPlay on anyways. So much money on something that doesn't matter. And I'm a millennial. I'm like the last year of a millennial. But if we're buying a sports car, we care about the sports car aspect. No one cares about the gimmicky Unreal Engine. I really hope there is a refresh for that car that kind of just fixes everything that everyone hates about it, because I feel like they just kind of missed the mark a lot. How does it compare to a pre-refreshed S550? So that would be the 2015 through 17 cars. That's what this car specifically competed with. When it comes to the S550, it's a big upgrade. Even on a base trim, you're getting much better in technology standard. So like our S550 has 0 safety tech except for like the basics of airbags. It doesn't even have Apple CarPlay, which I thought about ripping out. If you watch that video where it's 7 years later or 8 years later or something like that, my biggest complaint about the S550, you can rip it out and upgrade, but when you're spending that kind of money, you're just better off putting that into another fund if you're just gonna plan to get a V8 anyways. The base interior is a big step up. Our base car to that base car, totally a big upgrade. So I have a more Camaro following. So you're probably wondering, how does it compare to the Camaro 6 platform? And I'll regurgitate, I have driven pretty much every Camaro 6 except for a V6 1LE, the ZL1 twins, which is the ZL1 and the ZL1 1LE. Or ZLE is what we also call it. Driven at least 5 different super sports manuals, autos, 8 speeds, 10 speeds, and then I drove a 10-speed SS1LE. So I have a lot of experience with this car specifically in this platform. This car is, chassis-wise, is still better. When I first drove the S650, I was actually so disappointed I took the car back. Base GT was black. I actually was like, this is horrible. This feels like a Challenger to me. It was so boaty, very floaty. I didn't mean that for the rhyme. It was very boat-like. Whereas this car, I haven't driven an 18-inch wheel one because I didn't care for it, but at least this car feels stiffer in every way. It feels more confident in itself compared to a base S650. I was like, wow, this is awful. Then I drove a GT Premium, and that has 19-inch wheels, 255 all seasons all around. It still felt the same way, kind of like a luxury car. Like you definitely could cruise in it. I'd say it's a better cruiser, just like the S550 was. That's without a performance pack. It wasn't what I like, because I like this platform. The steering response, the steering feel, the steering weight is perfect, literally down to the T. If you're wondering what's the difference between an SS and an RS when it comes to those things, to me, a little bit of the heft because you have a V8 compared to the 3.6 liter. But for me overall though, the handling feel and all that feels exactly the same across the board in the SS. Now when I got to the SS1LE, I was blown away because it is a completely different vehicle. You'll never be able to build a regular SS to be a 1LE without spending a ton of money, in my opinion, because it was just so mind-boggling different. And that's how I felt when I got to drive the S650 Performance Pack. That changed my mind on that car. Changed my mind, because when I went from the Performance Pack, non-Performance Pack to the Performance Pack, that was the biggest jump in stiffness, steering response, steering feel, steering weight, completely different vehicle. I did like it, but I'll go into where it doesn't compare to this car, and it still lags behind. And I think it's a chassis level and probably just tuning. When I drove the Performance Pack, it was just as stiff as this car, which I love what they did to stiffen it. If you are a track enthusiast, not a straight line enthusiast, I'm more of a track guy. I like taking corners hard. I don't really care about straight line performance. The rear end of the S650, even with the Performance Pack, is still a little loose compared to an SS. This car, and especially a SS1LE, it's much improved over the S550 and S650 without the performance pack. Get to the handling, the SS and especially the 1LE feels much more natural, whereas the S650 with the performance pack, and by the way, without the performance pack, it felt so numb, I hated it. But with the performance pack, they added a lot more weight, but the weight feels fake. Kind of feels like a fake meat type situation where it's trying to be super heavy and trying to be super real, but it feels very synthetic. And that's the difference. This car and all of the 6 gens, they have a really good feel to them. They feel like a natural steering response. They feel like a natural feel from the street. The S650 performance pack fixed a lot of the issues when it came to the hev feel. On the base cars was non-existent. On the performance pack, you can definitely feel a little bit more, but you do not feel the road as much as you would feel it in this car. The S650 misses the mark. And maybe on a refresh of that car, they'll be able to re-engineer the steering rack or the tuning for that steering, because I think that's the biggest thing. If they can nail that down, got it as a 6-gen competitor. In the straight line, the S650, at least with the performance pack and the performance exhaust, it does either contend or beat the Camaro. It's got more horsepower, it weighs a little bit more, but at the end of the day, horsepower does win in the long run. You're looking at the chassis level, this is still better. The handling is still better. It still feels more natural, but the S650 with the performance pack definitely fixes the car, in my opinion. And that's when I would say, like, hey, actually it's a pretty good contender. I would say if you are gonna get an S650, or if you're on the fence about an S650, I'd say go drive a performance pack. Care about having more of a boat experience, I would skip the non-performance pack cars, which is the cars you can get a really good deal on and are sitting on dealer lots. Everyone wants a performance pack for that reason. If you want a non-performance pack, like I said, cross shopping, or if you want to try a performance pack and let me know what you think. In my opinion though, they definitely improved it. Still just cannot match this Alpha chassis. It's obvious because this is a Cadillac chassis, and Cadillac over-engineers everything, just like Al and them did with this car. They over-engineered it. If I were to get an S650, which I'm probably going to get an S650 GT down the line because I want to get rid of our 2016 Mustang, I would skip the premium trim. That whole trim is useless. You get the same tech in the base trim, those stupid tablet looking things. As much as I don't like them, the base trim is a better value. So I would get a base trim 301A package because it does add my color in as the half vinyl and half cloth seats. Skip the Getrag. The Getrag sucks. Last time I drove a Getrag was in a GT non-performance pack and I hated it. And as far as I know, it's the same transmission. It's not mounted. Transmission is mounted to the chassis, and there's your answer. It's not a good transmission. You need a Tremec, which you have to get a Dark Horse. If you're getting a Dark Horse, you're just better off getting a ZL1 or a SS1LE. It's gonna outperform a Dark Horse anyways. I would probably just get the 10-speed. Performance pack is a must. Base trim. The premium makes 0 cents to purchase. You can get a good deal on one. It does contend with this car finally, but it's still missing the mark in the handling department and a little bit in the weight department. This car and the SS still weighs less than it, but it is what, I mean, that's just the difference in chassis and the difference in engineering. But I'm not entirely sure because maybe they didn't have the full budget that they wanted to make the S650, because it seems like they kind of made the S650 last minute because they heard Camaro and Challenger going away. So they're like, oh, hey, we need to let's refresh our car and start promoting it. Thank you, Ford. As much as I give them shit because our 2016 Mustang is a piece of garbage, I gotta commend them, man. GM doesn't care about performance cars anymore. All they care about is SUVs and trucks that they suck at making. At least the trucks, I think, are better. The Unique Equinox is a big dud. It gets worse gas mileage. Looks better, but it's still a big turd. GM, I don't know what it is about them. They've become vanilla. It's like Mark wants to make the Camaro an EV sedan, which is the biggest blasphemy ever. I get it if they wanted to make both. That makes sense. You can have the EV sedan for the moms and pops that want just a Camaro. Maybe can make it an E28 and just have that. That can offset the credits for a last call V8 Camaro on the Alpha 2 chassis or VSS-R platform if they ever bring that into fruition. Even though the S650 isn't exactly perfect, but they actually sat there and said, hey, you know what? Screw the government. We're gonna make a V8 until we can. Well, GM just bows down. They make Corvettes, but you can't afford, most people can't afford the Corvette. The C8 has inflated so much in price. It used to be 59 grand. Now it starts at like 69 grand or something like that. So I commend Ford for doing the right thing and keeping the V8 alive, and hopefully they can keep it for a very long time, which they said they could, and they might become a hybrid, which I don't hate the idea of a hybrid, but as long as the V8 can stay in some form, I'm okay with it. But there is my answer about the S650 and my initial impressions of one. Be owning one if this 2016 Mustang doesn't keep burning a hole in my pocket. Anyways, guys, peace out.